Hi, and welcome to Lifestyle Management. We're now looking at Chapter 2 on psychosocial health. So let's go through this a bit and we'll help you understand everything here. Enjoying a high level of psychosocial health can make a difference between facing life challenges with optimism and confidence or feeling overwhelmed by the expectations and responsibilities. And I'm sure as a student you can appreciate that to some degree. So now recognizing how much potential each person has and how to express it in everyday life. Now you can check out the story on the human potential story on Christopher Brathas, and that's on page 45. And then later for part 2, you'll find on page 41 to 51, Understanding Mental Health, and we'll address those issues in part 2. Now, when we're considering this whole topic, if you will, of psychosocial health, many students may be experiencing psychosocial difficulties themselves, or they know a friend or a family who is experiencing psychosocial difficulties. The information contained within this chapter is going to help you identify warning signs for yourself and potentially some strategies that will assist. So let's begin with what is psychosocial health. So what is psychosocial health? Psychosocial health encompasses emotional health, mental health, social health, and spiritual health. You'll find on page 32 the tips from Live Your Life Well that will give you some insights on this. Now, mental health, as the first thing we're going to touch on in terms of psychosocial health, describes our ability to perceive reality as it is, not the way we want it to be, but as it is, respond to its challenges on everyday life and take responsibility, carry out adult responsibilities, that's 3, to develop rational strategies for living. Now, rational just really emphasizes that we're not going to go willy-nilly, hairy-dairy way out in the middle of nowhere to come up with some, outlandish strategy. They're rational, they're achievable, they're meaningful, and they're connected to us. And then lastly, the ability to adapt to change and to cope with adversity. Now those become very important in terms of the mental health components. Now you can review these criteria for mental health on a continuum. If you will, it's like there's your continuum. In the middle range, right there, we are seen to be managing ourselves well. But on either end, we are perhaps experiencing some day-to-day challenges that may be interfering with our positive and functional mental health. And so it's on these ends we need to spend a little more functional time thinking in terms of what can we do. Now, emotional health generally refers to feelings and moods and the ability to exhibit adaptability and compassion for others. Now that sounds pretty straightforward and easy, and yet emotional health is not something we're all particularly gifted at. And it requires concentrated effort to become better at it. And how that plays out, we see this having a big impact in what we know as emotional intelligence. Now, emotional intelligence has gained a great deal of attention in psychology, but it's also had a big attention given to the work world. Emotional intelligence has 5 components. Now, its connection to the work world is these 5 components are important in terms of what employers want to see from employees. They don't think they want to spend time teaching this. This takes time. These are maturation issues and things that we should be tackling ourselves. They want to be able to teach you skill sets that maybe we didn't get in our education or reinforce those skill sets that we did get. So here are the 5 components of emotional intelligence. Self-awareness, know who you are, what your strengths and weaknesses are, and they be genuine. Altruism, we're going to come back to this one a little later, but it's the ability to sort of be out there to help other people without looking for what's in it for me. 3, personal motivation. I don't need people to motivate me. I motivate myself. I can generate my own reasons for doing things. And if it's working with other people or working for an employer, my employer doesn't need to motivate me. I can motivate myself, and that becomes important. 4, empathy. Not sympathy, feeling badly for other people, but empathy. Trying to get yourself to view the world from somebody else's perspective. And then 5, the ability to love and be loved by friends, partners, family members. Now that's a big kettle of love in terms of this emotional intelligence. That's a big area, but it's all the elements that are important for us to get a good handle on, and some of what we will cover in this chapter will help. Now, social health, this is the ability to interact with people around us, as well as our capacity to function as a contributing member of society while supporting and helping others to do the same. So social health is that recognition that we are part of a bigger group, our school, our classroom, our friendships, our society, our community, and that we are a part of that. And the more we see ourselves a part of that and a functioning member, where we go reach out and we help, we volunteer, that's the part of social health. And then lastly, there's spiritual health. This involves our ability to identify our basic purposes in life and to experience the fulfillment of achieving our full potential. Now, as with emotional health, there is in spiritual health a spiritual intelligence, and this is gaining more this is a term that's a psychosocial term that's gaining more attention. Some define spiritual intelligence as the capacity to enhance an individual's capacity or capabilities and qualities such as compassion, creativity, wisdom by improving our self-awareness and feelings, and of a connection with the divine energy. Now, it's important with spiritual intelligence to consider the vastness of the area of what could be divine energy. It doesn't necessarily mean religious doctrine, but it does suggest something bigger than ourselves influencing or having a reason to be connected to that brings us comfort, brings us good feelings and connectivity. Okay, now let's look at the next point around looking at how can I lead a more fulfilling life? What are the things that I can do? When considering how to lead a fulfilling life, there's some key points to scratch the surface of yourself to get at what's needed to do that. Now, the first is identify your needs. You need to know what you need. Now, we're going to look at two theorists here. One you're more familiar with, I suspect, than the other. And the one you're familiar with is perhaps Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Now, first, we must satisfy that basic physiological level of needs. Food, water, air, shelter, sleep, sexual expression. These are basic needs. Now, the theory goes that you're only able to move to the higher needs once these needs are met completely. As long as you don't have needs for food, water, air, shelter, sleep, and sexual expression, those things are occurring in your life already. They're not things you think about. You don't wonder where your food's coming from. Only then can you move into the safety needs. And only when you complete and fully and completely achieve your safety needs, you know where you live, it's not at risk of being taken away from you, can you then move into the love and belonging area of need category. Very few individuals reach self-actualization functioning. This is the top level of the pinnacle of the triangle, and that's the highest possible level. Now, the second theory is Erikson's theory of psychosocial development, and here he explores three aspects of identity. One, the ego identity. This is our sense of self. Two is the personal identity. This is the peculiarities that makes me, me, and you, and you, and you. It's those things that make us separate and unique to one another. My likes, my dislikes, my habits, my peculiarities. And then three is the social cultural identity, the roles that we play. Now, if you're unfamiliar with roles, in sociology, roles really just means the parts that we have in our life, the roles that we play. In my example, I'm a son, I'm a father, I'm soon to become a grandfather. I'm a professor. I'm a runner. I'm a volunteer. So these are different roles that I play. You play different roles from me. You may play some of the same roles, and we each try to do the best with those roles as we can. And how social experience shapes an individual throughout his or her lifetime from birth to death. So it's really important when we look at, clarifying our needs, we can go back in history in our own personal life to see what's been important, to start to imagine what might be something we'd still want to be able to achieve in our life. Now, the second point, which is connected to the first, is clarify your values. Now, we're not all aware of what our values are, and it's not surprising we don't spend time reflecting on that. And yet, it's our values that drives our behavior. Values, the criteria by which you evaluate things, people, events, even yourself, represent what's most important to you. So with values, it's the underlying reason that you make a choice to do this and not that. Part of it is what you think is right, or what you think is most desirable, or what you want to do the most. These are all things that you would say are underlying the behavior of making the choice, would be the values that underlies those behaviors. Now, Milton Rokic, he's a researcher that distinguished between two types of values. Now, we're not limited to this particular theory, but this is the one that's covered in your textbook. So the two, first, instrumental values. This represents the way in which we think and act that we hold to be most important. I'm going to come back to that one in a minute. Terminal values, these represent the goals and the achievements, the ideal states that we strive toward. So, terminal values might be, I want to have a loving family when I want to meet somebody, my perfect connector, I want to have children, I want to have a loving family, that's my goal, that's my terminal value. The instrumental value will be the things that I think about and how I act to achieve that goal. What you don't want is having that particular goal for a loving family and then choose behaviors and thinking that move you away from that. You want to align terminal and instrumental values. Now, values are more than ideals that we'd like to attain. They should be reflected in the way we live our day-to-day life. And so you can look at your day-to-day life to get clues as to what you value. Next, strengthen your self-esteem. Now, I'm going to make a distinction here. Self-esteem and self-concept are two different things. Self-concept are the messages that we hear from the people we trust and value around us, who tell us a bit about who we are. Self-esteem, this is the belief or the pride we have in ourselves. It gives us the confidence to achieve at school, to achieve at work, and to reach out to other people. It's not based on external factors. It's developed over time, beginning in childhood. And this is where the distinction of self-concept and self-esteem needs to be made. When I said that it's not based on external factors, that is self-esteem. Self-esteem is how you feel about who you are. Self-concept is developed through the association of others. Self-esteem is, how do I feel about who I am in relationship to the messages that I've received? So that does begin in childhood and goes right through to our entire life. We constantly reevaluate our self-esteem. How do I, now that you're in university or in college, you might start to be wondering, how am I as a student now? How do I feel about what I'm doing and how I'm doing? What do I feel about myself and the skills that I'm exhibiting? Now, some of you might have very positive self-esteem and are feeling good about what you're doing and see positive outcomes for yourself. And the evidence is showing that to be true. Whereas others of you might have doubts and questions about your capabilities and your strengths and are struggling at times. Self-esteem has proven to be the best predictor of college and university adjustment. Developing the habits of positive thinking or self-talk is a means of bolstering self-esteem. You can get a handle on how you think about yourself by listening to your self-talk. When you approach a problem, what are you saying to yourself? Oh my God, here's that problem again. How do I avoid this? I don't want to do it. There's your self-talk that says, I'm not really happy with my skills as I approach that issue. Whereas if I have that same issue and I have positive self-esteem, I might be going, oh, I've seen this before, I can do this again. Okay, now we'll move into managing your moods. A mood is a sustained emotional state that colors the view of the world for hours or days. And you can imagine when you've been in a bad mood, you might see an event that occurs in front of you and your bad mood colors how you view that. If you were in a positive mood and you viewed that same set of circumstances, you might take a different view of that. So your mood affects how you see the world. The most effective way to banish a bad mood, challenge what's caused it in the first place. Now I've posted right here a model about which is called an ABC log, ABC, and what we're doing with this is looking at the antecedent, the A, the behavior, which is the B, and consequences, which is the C. So it's the antecedent and the consequence, which was the most important. Whenever you have a certain mood or an experience, you put that down as a new entry in your journal and tell me, not tell me, but you sort of record in your journal, well, what preceded this mood and what happened after this mood? So you're looking at antecedent and consequences. Are there things that precipitate this mood coming out? And are there consequences, reinforcers that support that mood in these instances? Cognitive appraisal is another tool, or reframing, that helps you look at setbacks in a new light. Now, concentrating on alternating negative feelings, by altering negative feelings, setting a quick, achievable goal that can boost your spirits and small successes. Be happy. A research-based strategy to this end about being more happy is to identify what you're grateful for. Keep a gratitude journal. Now, if you're not familiar with gratitude journals, email me or stop me in the hallway to ask. I'll send you some resources on how to keep a gratitude journal and how to use one. Explore your altruistic side. Again, we're going to come back to that. Connect with your friends and exercise consistently ranks as the single most effective strategy for banishing bad feelings. Okay, let's look at feeling in control. Now, this is not control of others. This is just feeling in control of yourself. Albert Bandura's social cognitive theory of human functioning suggests that self-efficacy, and we'll explore this a bit, is a foundation of human motivation, well-being, and personal accomplishments. Now, self-efficacy. If your self-concept is clear to you, who you are, and your self-esteem is positive about how you feel about who you are, you have a good handle on your values, you've got a sense about how to be good to yourself, then self-efficacy is these good feelings about who you are and your capabilities. That it affects your motivation. You're more motivated to do things when you know who you are and you're happy with who you are and you feel good about the skills that you have. Well-being and personal accomplishments. You remember positive personal accomplishments and draw on them for future concerns and issues. That's self-efficacy. Now, also what we could be doing to be more in control is to develop autonomy. Autonomous individuals have an internal locus of control, and we'll review this in a minute. That is the view to control as originating from within yourself rather than with others. So an internal locus of control, when you do well in class or do well on a test, it's because you can recognize that you took management of your studying, you prepared for the test, and the mark that you got reflected the work that you put in. Whereas someone with an external locus of control will look at the mark that they got and maybe say, oh, the teacher just wasn't fair in their marking. Well, that's putting the locus of control on somebody else. Had you done the work in a strong and positive way to meet that achievement, then the teacher doesn't judge the work. The teacher marks based on what's there. And so locus of control becomes very important. We can also develop assertiveness, that is to be assertive yourself, assert yourself. Now, it's important to make a distinction. Assertion or assertiveness is not aggression. There's two different strategies. Being assertive means recognizing your feelings and making your needs and desires clear to others. Assertiveness is a behavior that respects your rights and the rights of other people, even when you disagree. And that is a skill. Now, if you have emotional intelligence, that helps. It makes it more difficult to be assertive when you don't have a handle on your emotions, because sometimes your emotions creep in and alter your ability to be respectful of others, and you may not even be aware of it. Now, another point, connect with others. At every age, people who feel connected to others tend to be healthier physically and psychologically. As we begin to think of working, you're about to embark on careers, or being together with other people, and when we start to see that as a win-win situation, then that's where the connecting of others can be so valuable. Being socially responsible. This is where I was mentioning about altruism. Now, altruism is an unselfish regard for others. Social responsibility is a principle, or it's even an ethical theory, that suggests governments, corporations, organizations, as well as us as individuals, have a responsibility to contribute to the welfare of society. Now, many businesses across Canada and the world have adopted socially responsible mandates that what we do needs not only to be good for us, but needs to consider the values of other people, and so it needs to be good with them as well. Helping others enhance self-esteem, release physical and mental stress, and protect psychological well-being. So going out to volunteer to help other people for their benefit, not for yours, is healthy. Service learning helps students reflect on the health disparities evident in their own communities and assist them in becoming and making healthier lifestyle choices so that they are better prepared to help others. Now, one of the areas that does creep into some of our lives some of the time is overcoming loneliness. To be more in control is not to let loneliness overcome us, but to find strategies that we can do to overcome that. Now, for some individuals, being alone and being lonely are two different things, and that's a distinction that's important to be made. To combat loneliness, people may join groups or surround themselves with superficial acquaintances. Clearly, it's better to be surrounding with people who care about you and you care about them. The internet, of course, may actually make some people feel even lonelier because you're not really connected where someone's there that you can make face-to-face contact and touch. They're there virtually. Gender also affects the experiences of loneliness. The key to overcoming loneliness are developing skills to fulfill your own potential and learning to reach out to others. Now, in connection with loneliness, and this is where we're starting to move, what we'll move into as part 2, is facing social anxieties. Now, social anxieties often become a problem in late adolescence. In a severe form of social anxiety, it's called social phobia. Now, individuals typically fear and avoid various social situations, and some shyness can be overcome by improving social skills, but for those with more disabling social anxiety, we may do best with more professional guidance. And I'll make some clarifications about how to view mental illness issues like social phobia and some of the others we're going to do in part 2. And I'll just allude to it now, but I'll re-emphasize it in part 2, is please do not self-diagnose and do not diagnose others. That's left to the people who are diagnosticians, who are familiar with the criteria that is found in the DSM-5. All right, so please don't do that in part 2. And I'll re-emphasize it in part 2. So thank you, everybody, and let's get going. Don't forget to watch part 2. Bye now.